Welcome to Sew and Tell, where sewists from fashion, theater, and indie sewing bring their different perspectives to the hottest topics in the sewing community. I'm Amanda Carestio.
I'm Meg Healy.
And I'm Kate Zaynard.
Today on the podcast, we're talking about some of our favorite fabrics and giving you lots of tips and insights on how to sew with them. We'll each share something in our SewJo segment, and then we'll ask you to share something too. But before we get started, let's have a little check-in. How are you guys doing this nice summery week? Well, I guess it is here in Toronto. I don't know. Is it still snowing there, guys?
It's not snowing. It is raining, actually.
Raining and cool.
Yeah. Oh. But it's supposed to warm up in the next couple days, so we're not too... I'm not too miffed about it. I don't know about you, Amanda.
It's okay. I'm okay with it.
I have a little bit of a light summer cold, so that's kind of irritating.
Oh,
but
yeah. I know you're in like full on winter sweater gear.
Yeah, I'm just wearing my shawl. It's okay.
Oh, is it a shawl? That's really cute. I thought it was like a full on sweater. Very cute. Yeah, well, it's been exciting here in Toronto because we just won the NBA Finals.
Nice.
And Canada has never seen an NBA championship before. So literally yesterday, I live kind of close to the downtown core where they had that parade, and all I was hearing. So thankfully, we weren't recording yesterday because it was just hooting and hollering.
So loud.
It's been really exciting here in Toronto. I've never quite seen anything like it. I'm not really even a sports fan. It's just kind of fun to see everyone come together.
Yeah,
that's really nice. That's nice when, even if you're not super into sports, when like a city comes together like that to celebrate. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, especially when there are no riots.
Yes.
Riots can be bad.
Did anyone do any sewing? Oh, I'm just saying, did anyone do any sewing the past weekend?
I did no sewing. I spent the entire weekend with family. I went up to visit an aunt and uncle and a cousin on Saturday, and then Father's Day was here in the U.S. On Sunday, so we spent it with Mark's father, and then my father and my sister and brother-in-law and niece were in town.
That's nice.
And then I took yesterday off to spend some extra time with them. They left this morning. So lots of family, no sewing, but I did manage to impress several family members with my sewing prowess. So at least there was that.
Nice. Yeah, we did a lot of Father's Day stuff for my husband. Had a really fun day on Sunday, but I did manage to cut out and sew a dress. I've been working on this little really simple V-neck dress, self-drafted thing, and I've made two, and I can't stop making it. So, but it's really, it's kind of nice to sit down and in an hour and a half, pretty much, you can bust this little dress out. And
love that.
And it's kind of like a nightgown. Like, it's big and
is this the one
comfy.
Is this the pattern that the orange one is?
Yes.
Oh, I love it. It's so cute.
I love it. It's my new summer uniform.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What are you calling it?
I don't know. I need some help, you guys.
Any suggestions out there?
Yeah.
I would love that. Like, what do you call us? Do you name your own self-drafted patterns for yourself, or you're just like, this is my? I don't know.
I don't, but I probably should.
Yeah, you totally should. I don't self-draft patterns ever, but I think you should.
I'm going to.
I think you should too.
Done. Right. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to mix up our format just a little bit today. We each have a favorite fabric that we have picked out that we're going to talk about a little bit and talk about some tips and our favorite things. So I, of course, picked Cork because what else would I pick? Come on, guys. So I want to start by just giving you a little bit of information that I grabbed off the Fabric Funhouse website. They sell a lot of great prints of Cork. I just love them.
Such a great collection.
It is a great website.
Yeah.
And they're very nice and send us stuff sometimes to make projects out of. So,
exactly.
So off their website, I got some of this great information. Cork is harvested from the cork oak tree, which grows primarily in the West Mediterranean basin. So Portugal is a big cork place, for example. When the cork oak has reached 20 years of age, the bark is stripped from the tree by a highly skilled harvester. That tree is then marked so it will be not be harvested for another 8 to 10 years. The cork oak is the only tree that benefits from the removal of its bark, and since it regenerates, it is truly an eco-conscious and sustainable natural resource. So it's actually good for the trees to take the cork off of it. Right. I love that. The same tree can be harvested every 8 to 10 years for over 200 years. once it's harvested, the tree absorbs about 5 times the carbon dioxide, making harvesting an important process in reducing greenhouse gases as well. I love that. Once the cork is harvested from the cork oak, it is boiled, dried, shaved into thin sheets, and sealed with a non-toxic sealant. Once the cork fabric is complete, it is stain-resistant, water-resistant, scratch-proof, hypoallergenic, antimicrobial, lightweight, incredibly soft, and flame-retardant. So it is like a miracle material.
Why isn't everything sewed made out of cork?
I don't know.
I need some cork pants.
I mean,
pants.
there is the unsustainability issue of you have to get it from the West Mediterranean basin because that's where it grows. But at the same time, there are so many great things about it, including the fact that it's not only sustainable for the tree, it's actually healthy for the tree to harvest it.
Right. Yeah.
So I just love it. So I wanted to start off by asking if you guys had any experience sewing with cork.
I have sewn some bags with cork, and I like it.
Meg?
I've never sewn with cork before.
All right. So well, I'm just kind of
to-do list. Yeah,
definitely. I'm learning still, working with it a little bit more all the time, and picking up my different experiences and learning kind of what works and what doesn't. So I'm going to give some tips, and if you guys have any other tips, it's in many ways it's a lot like sewing with vinyl or leather, something that doesn't that the holes don't close back up, something that when you pierce it, there's a permanent hole.
Can you make garments out of cork? Is it that? Kind of,
it's a little too stiff.
It's a little
could you make like a jacket out of cork? Like that's just for
think
example.
You probably
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, I'd almost be more inclined to put panels into another kind of jacket.
Oh, like a panel.
Yeah, because it doesn't have quite the same. It doesn't have quite the same drape as like a vinyl does.
Okay.
But it does have a cloth backing. Inevitably, which kind of gives it a little extra support. It's a little bit more sewable in some ways than leather and vinyl because of that sewing, that fabric backing. So some tips. Cut it with a rotary cutter because you'll get nice clean lines, or a utility knife, something like that, rather than with scissors. I usually draw my pattern pieces on the wrong side on the fabric and then cut it from the wrong side as well. And that has always worked out really beautifully for me. You want to use a sharp needle, as in a Microtex sharp needle, not just like brand new needle, though you could do that too. That pierces it fast and leaves a kind of a smaller hole in it. It's a good idea to use upholstery weight thread, just because it's more sturdy. Obviously, you don't want to pin it. You want to use binder clips or wonder clips or something like that. Same thing when you're cutting out the pieces. Like I said, I usually trace them, but you use pattern weights rather than pins to hold them in place while you do that. Longer stitch length, because the closer the holes are, the more likely it is to perforate and tear. So, go for maybe a 3.0 or longer on the stitch length. I've been able to iron my cork, but you want to kind of test it first to make sure that you're not getting it too hot, especially with some of the like metallic or ones that have metallic coatings on them. You don't want to mess with that. So get a little scrap, test press it. It's never going to press really, really crisp because it just isn't. It's not that kind of fabric. But you can also just finger press it fairly effectively, I've found.
Or put it under weights. Like if you put it under a stack of books or something overnight, like in between
if you need
steps.
if you need a good crisp fold and you've got the time, that is a great way to do it. So those are my main cork sewing tips. Do you guys have any additional tips that you know, or even things that you might think for vinyl might work for cork?
Yeah, I do have one, because I think when I sewed cork, my machine had a little bit of trouble kind of grabbing onto it and pulling it through with the presser foot. So
is it a bit sticky, like kind of like it's leather or vinyl?
It is. So I don't have a Teflon foot, but I'm imagining that would probably solve part of that problem. But I do the Scotch tape on the bottom of the presser foot trick, and that works really well for both vinyl and cork.
Oh, awesome.
Or even a walking foot could also help with that.
I think so too.
For sure. Or a roller foot.
Yeah, it's just got
or just no foot at all.
No foot at all.
No, you definitely want foot.
You definitely need a foot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that tricky spots that I've run into is just, that it can create some pretty thick layers, especially if you're sewing front of a bag to the back of a bag and you've got several layers and they need to be turned under. But I really think that if you've sewn any amount of time with vinyl, that cork feels very similar.
I agree. I've never had any trouble with the cork sticking for me personally, but I can totally see how that would happen, and that's a great suggestion. Also, if you're getting to really thick layers, if you've got a whole bunch of layers going on, I would recommend slowing down the speed a bit because less likely to break your needle if you got.
Oh my gosh, I break so many needles, especially when I make bags.
Yes, well, and I have to say, the first time I was sewing with cork at all, I managed to throw off my sewing machine or something, and I had to take it in and get it repaired. But I don't think that was the cork. I think that was just one of those moments that my sewing machine did, because honestly, I've never struggled too much with cork. Meg, do you have any thoughts or suggestions? I know you've never worked with it before, but...
Any thoughts on cork? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Well, I definitely want to get. When I was at the fabric shopping last time, I noticed they just got a new roll of cork in, so I definitely gonna pick some up. But now I just need to figure out what I want to make in it. I don't want to make. I want to make something unconventional in it, so I'm gonna try doing the panel in something, or like a belt or something. I could do.
What about a hat or something? Would a hat be weird?
A hat?
A hat?
Like a bucket hat. What?
Bucket hat out of
I love that.
That could be.
Because I love cork because it does have that texture and that dimension that leather has, but I'd much rather sew with cork.
Well, definitely. Yes, and that was one of the questions I was actually going to ask. Is I make bags with cork, but I have so much cork because my mother-in-law gives me all this wonderful cork straight from Portugal, and it's fantastic. But I've got a meter by a meter piece right now, and I just cut off a very small amount of it to make a bag. But I've still got all of this cork, so I need to figure out some things that I can make out of this cork. And a belt is a great idea. The bucket hat is intriguing me for sure.
What about some kind of basket organizer?
Definitely,
because I think it's really nice for home decor type projects because it does have that dimension.
Yeah,
you just kind of want to touch it.
Absolutely, and I like that idea too of doing some panels or something like you would do with leather.
But I'm just going through. I know Berta had in one of their magazines, they had a DIY with cork in it. I'm just trying to remember what it was. I think it was a little coin purse or something. I'm just kind of scrolling through to see. But
yeah, you remember that little
try and find it.
Triangle bag that we put in a?
Yeah,
I bet that would be really cute in cork.
Definitely.
Yeah, we put that in a recent issue of Creative Machine Embroidery.
It was,
right?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll link to that pattern and that sort of thing. But definitely, if you guys have any more ideas, tell me. And if any of our listeners have any great ideas, I'm always joking about making a Corkset, so a corset out of cork.
I think that's such a good idea. I think that's so cute.
I'm just not sure I quite have the guts to do it. I'm a little worried about combining cork and corsetry when I haven't done corsetry in a while. So we'll see if that happens. But I'd love to hear anybody else's suggestions for sure. And before we move on, I do want to talk about one other thing when it comes to cork. I had some fun last year figuring out the best methods for embroidering on cork with an embroidery machine. And so just for anybody out there who might be embroiderers, here are a couple quick tips for you for embroidering. Again, use this sharp needle. Slow down your speed. You don't want it to go too fast, but don't go don't go like super, super slow because then it kind of starts to catch because the cork closes around the needle a little bit. So kind of find a moderately slow speed for your embroidery. Definitely do not hoop. Cork floated in the hoop with temporary spray adhesive or a sticky stabilizer. Because, the hoop burn on that, I can't even begin to imagine. And don't pick a really dense design because, the more holes, the more likely it is to perforate. So pick a lighter stitching design, something pretty that'll show off the cork underneath it, and you can have a lovely embroidery on cork.
And I just found the DIY, and it's a free download on Bertastyle.com too. It's called a cork cord cover, so it keeps your headphones from detangling inside your purse, and it's a cork DIY.
Okay, I definitely need to make one of those.
Yeah, so I'll definitely link that in the show notes. I knew it. It's like when you just can't stop thinking about something. I'm like, I know it's on here somewhere, so I'm glad I just found that. So
I'm glad you did too.
I would remember, yeah. Yeah, so from cork to spandex.
Very different
fabric. Very, very different. So we often associate spandex with 80s workout wear and tight and bright parties, but spandex is actually just the term for the synthetic fiber that is the latex yarn knitted or even woven into other fibers during the fabric manufacturing process. So spandex can be incorporated into woven fabrics, like I said, to make jeans stretchy, but it's most commonly associated as the fabric name for swimwear, dancewear, as well as athletic wear. And actually, the most common fabric composition of spandex is about 80% nylon and only 20% spandex. And that's kind of your typical four-way stretch swimwear fabric. So that's what I find is a good composition for, we call the fabric spandex, but it's really only 20% spandex. I always thought that was kind of neat. Yeah. And then a little fact, if you may or may not know, is that lycra is usually interchangeably used with spandex as to call the fabric, but lycra is actually a trademark name for spandex.
So lycra and spandex are basically the same thing.
They're the same thing, but one's a trademark name for spandex. Yeah,
things I did not know.
Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, I remember learning. Yeah, so when you see jeans with lycra, it's spandex. It's just so just a little fact. So before I kind of jump into all things spandex, do you guys have any experiences sewing with spandex?
I don't think I have any experience sewing with what is... No, that's probably not even true. That's absolutely not true. Okay, so sorry. So I don't have a lot of practice sewing with what you were just describing with the 80% nylon and the 20% spandex. I definitely have sewn many times with knit fabrics that are about 95% cotton and 5% spandex or 7% spandex, something like that. I do leggings out of that stuff all the time.
Just like a jersey type of like cotton knit.
Yeah,
like
super
that,
nice.
Typical,
But I just remembered I did sew a pair of leggings for a cosplay the other day that were more traditional, and I don't think I actually checked the fiber content, but I'm pretty sure that they were.
It's like
your
typical
spandex.
like bright colored, very stretchy. Yeah.
Yes. They were great purple. And
love that.
Yes, they were pretty. And it was that particular experience was basically the same as sewing with the jersey. It was yeah, it was very similar. So I just usually sew them like they're knits, and everything works out okay.
Yeah.
How about
you, Amanda?
My experience, I've sewn a lot of stretch denim jeans, so that, has a good amount of spandex in them. I also, a couple of years ago, did a video for Sewn News on creating a mermaid tail, like a swimsuit style mermaid tail.
I remember that.
And that, I'm fairly certain, was spandex. It was probably a blend, but it was purple and sparkly. And I had also sewn... my daughter a costume out of some kind of like mermaid spandex, but it was just a self-drafted thing, nothing super complicated. So minimal experience.
I'm not sure if that video is still up, but if it is, it will definitely be linked in the show notes.
Yes, I think it's still up somewhere. We'll find it.
Yeah. we'll swim and find it in the sea of videos.
Exactly.
Wah.
I'm not sure if that's a sewing pun, but I'm going to count it as one.
I know.
That was a good pun anyway.
You get bonus points either way.
Yeah.
I get bonus points, guys. Okay. So I just want to talk about some pattern considerations. And again, when I say spandex, I'm not just talking about like a jersey knit, like in a t-shirt. I'm talking about if you're making like a bodysuit.
Right.
Like
the
a
athletic
sports bra, like the athletic wear. The thing that you really need to consider is called negative ease. So this means that the pattern actually needs to be smaller than your body measurements. So for a swimsuit, let's say using a 20% spandex fabric, you usually want to do about a 10% pattern reduction. And sometimes on like swimwear patterns or athletic wear patterns that are supposed to be, that are just drafted and you just pick a size. Sometimes because the fabric stretch can depend, and I use like a stretch gauge for that you can find the amount of stretch in your fabric. Instead of just finding my size, I just do my body measurement calculation and calculate I take away 10% of my measurement, so I only implicate 90% of my measurement on the pattern. So let's say, my waist is 28 inches, then I times that by 0.9, and so my garment around my waist needs to be 25.2 inches. So I find that that's a good way to do it, and then you just kind of measure out. I divide it by 4 and then implement that on each quarter of the pattern. So sometimes I find that that's a little bit easier.
Interesting.
Nice,
so you would do that.
Fit.
You would do that if you were working on a pattern that was not drafted as tight as you would like it to fit.
Yeah,
okay.
Or to just double check the size. Like let's say if it's like a really tight, like athletic tank, like a yoga tank or something, I would just do that calculation to make sure that it's
and then you'd compare
enough.
It to the sizes and use that
I would
to
compare
figure
to the
out
size,
which one
or
you
I
want.
I would just do that for my bust, waist, hip, and just create a completely new side seam size line as well. I'd measure out from bust, waist, hip, and then connect them with a curve.
And this is because nobody wants a baggy bathing suit.
Yes, a baggy bathing suit, or even when you're doing like a two-piece too, like it really stays in and holds you in. It's like spandex should really be holding you in, especially for leggings too. When I've tried to make a pair of leggings that were not smaller than my body, when I would even go for a walk, they'd be sliding down, I'd be hiking up my legs. It's very uncomfortable. So you want to make sure that they're like that percent smaller than your body. So that's kind of just the main fitting issue that I do in that calculation. And I can put that calculation up in the show notes.
Oh, yes, please do. That will be very useful, I think.
Yeah. And so some sewing considerations. Obviously, you just can't stitch it together. Like, I remember when I was in high school, like just beginning sewing, and I thought I could make myself a pair of bike shorts for dance class. And I was very new to sewing. I just would go into something new with no research, and so I just got purple lycra, made bike shorts, and just, I don't know, I sewed it together with a straight needle and regular thread and no special stitch, and I put them on and I did a little dance squat and pop, all the goes the seams. Yeah, so definitely serger or on your regular sewing machine, ballpoint, stretch needle, stretch stitch or zigzag stitch. Or, which is a fabulous new product. They actually were a sponsor for a knit maxi dress sew-along that I did, is Coat's EloFlex thread, which is total game changer. The thread is actually elastic, so you can just sew knits, and even so, I have tried it on spandex before. I have done a bathing suit with EloFlex thread. It is quite strong. You can actually pull the thread and it stretches.
So you just do a regular straight stitch?
You just do a regular straight stitch.
And then it just pulls. Oh, that's really neat.
And it stretches. It's actually the coolest thing. But sometimes for extra stability, I still do a zigzag stitch with the stretch thread, just for extra, like on side seams and stuff. But if it's internal seams, like if I'm doing gathering or, some panel seams, I'll just do a straight stitch. But yeah, so that's a great.
Neat. Yeah, I remember seeing you work with that thread, and I was sitting there like, I wonder where I can get a hold of some of this because I need to try it out.
Yeah, it is so great. It's probably, yeah, it was, yeah, anyways, we'll link to it, but it's great. And then the other thing is, while you're actually sewing it, it's tempting to like stretch the span because it is so stretchy as you're sewing it, and just making sure that one layer isn't stretching more than the other and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
But
now, does a walking foot help with that too?
I find that just a lighter pressure on the foot helps.
Okay.
You know, when you
because if it's too tight,
like,
it'll
up a little bit.
bind.
Yeah. If it's the machine's pushing too hard down on the fibers, it'll really kind of lengthen it out and make it all like ripply. But I find if I just lightened up the pressure, that really helps ease it along as well. And honestly, just practice with that fabric, just doing little test seams and stuff like that really helps. But yeah, but I think definitely if you have a serger, that's totally the best way to sew with spandex. 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Is spandex pretty much the same thing as swimsuit material?
Yes, totally.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure because I feel like that's just, I don't know, there's different blends, and so sometimes you don't know if it will work for a swimsuit. But so do you want to use like 100% spandex, or is there a blend percentage?
Well, that's the thing is spandex is oftenly only just titled the fabric, but spandex is literally a piece of latex thread that's woven into other. So you can't, if you had 100% spandex, it would be a big piece of rubber, basically. Yeah. So usually like 10 to 20% spandex in a blend, either with polyester or nylon is kind of the usual
for swimwear.
And you kind of want to look for maybe a little bit of a thicker weave for swimwear, right? Or am I crazy?
It depends. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely different weights to the spandex, but generally, sometimes I just find if it's a lighter color, you might need a lining, or something like that. Yeah. But definitely do like a stretch test if you're not lining it, especially with the leggings. Like just like if you can see like the light through it. There's nothing worse than
a bathing suit you can't wear in public.
Yes, exactly. Or even like leggings.
Yeah,
you do a little squat and it becomes totally see-through. And you can sometimes see other people in those if it's like a cheap fabric too. I always leggings. Find because spandex is kind of expensive. It can get upwards of like 30 or so a yard even for good stuff. Yeah, but. Yeah, so I'm so excited to go to New York for my honeymoon. We already booked it, but the best spandex you can buy. They have stores just called Spandex House, and it just so fun.
Awesome.
Wow.
I'm so excited.
Exciting.
Yeah. And I have some videos on finishing spandex that I can link to as well. There's lots of things that you can do by using strips of spandex as elastic, and you just stretch the strip as you serge it, and then I wrap it around and use a twin needle, and you get really professional looking edges.
Cool. Awesome.
Well,
yeah, definitely link to those. We'd like to see them.
Yeah, but... Anyways, I probably could have like a whole episode on spandex. I'll just keep quiet now.
Okay.
All right, you guys, I have a confession. It's something that you already know about me, that linen is my favorite kind of fabric to sew with, especially for garments.
Yes, we do know that.
But it's kind of lovely. There's not a whole lot that's super tricky about sewing it. So I picked a different fabric today to talk about just because I think it's something that a lot of people want to sew with this time of year, and it can be a little intimidating. And so that fabric is double gauze, which I
love double gauze.
Love this stuff. So today I'm going to share a few tips, some of which I gathered from the June-July 2017 issue of Sew News, and also just kind of some tips through my personal experience. But double gauze, one of the reasons that I love it is also kind of one of the reasons that I think it's intimidating to people is because it is textured, and that can be a little bit tricky when it comes time to cut and to sew it. But it's essentially 2 layers of thin gauze that are either fused together or stitched together. So you treat them as one. And there's a big range, I think, of quality of double gauze out there. I've ordered double gauze online that was perfectly flat and see-through, and I've also ordered double gauze online and gotten stuff that is a little bit thicker and has that nice crinkly texture that I love so much. So I think just know, like, maybe it's something you want to consider ordering swatches of before you commit to yardage. You can also look at the weight and kind of get an idea of what you're going to be working with. I think really you run into kind of the sheerness issue when you look at lighter double gauze, when you're looking at lighter colors. So I love me some black double gauze, but so I think it's just the kind of thing that you want to either buy in store or get a swatch of online before you fully commit to yardage.
Wait, I have a question really quick.
Yeah.
The stuff that you got that was flat and see-through, did you wash it?
I didn't even go that far because it was see-through.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if it crinkled up in the wash.
It might. Yeah. I didn't even get that far with it. Because what I was using it for, it wouldn't have worked very well.
Fair.
Yeah. So I think some tips for when you are picking out patterns for double gauze is that you really want to stay away from things that are super fitted and super detailed, because kind of like velvet, like that detail is going to get lost in the texture of the fabric itself. And also, if you make anything that's too fitted, anywhere there's stress on the seams with double gauze, it's going to kind of pull apart, and it's going to create holes along that seam line.
Because gauze is just not the most stable fabric.
It's not the most stable.
It has such an open weave
which
to
is
it.
why you love it, but it definitely
totally
makes for some extra considerations. So the other thing that I've run into with using double gauze is, I think when you're looking at patterns, you want to stick with patterns that use facings instead of binding on the neck hole and the armholes, because I've tried to do binding with double gauze, and it's really pretty tricky just because the fabric has a tendency to shred anytime you're sewing really close to the edge. So, I think if you've got a favorite pattern you want to use with double gauze, it's a good idea to take a step and just do a really quick draft of facing for the neckline or for the armhole. And I think it's just a easier, longer lasting finish when you're talking about double gauze. So a couple of cutting tips, which is honestly where I think I have the most trouble with double gauze, because it has a tendency to shift and kind of morph because of its crinkliness. But basically, you don't want to iron it super flat before you cut it, because it almost functions like a knit fabric, because it kind of contracts once it gets crinkly again, and then you're going to end up, if you've ironed it flat, you cut it, you sew it, and then it contracts. It could be too small for you, and it could be tight in certain areas. So you definitely want to avoid that. I pretty much use a rotary cutter for everything these days, but it's definitely a good fit for double gauze, just keeping it nice and flat while you cut it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because and I mean, I've cut pattern pieces from double gauze, held them up, and they are completely wonky, and you don't know how that's happened, but you kind of have to go with it. You kind of have to let go of your perfectionism a little bit when you work with double gauze, because that's just the nature of the beast. And then also, it does have a tendency to stretch, like in armholes and neck linings, and it can stretch out and doesn't necessarily contract. So before you put any stress on those areas, I think it's a good idea to consider interfacing and also using a lot of stay stitching, just as close to that edge as you can get to kind of reinforce it. Because it can get a little bit tricky. A couple of other quick tips, kind of like with the gauze, you want to use a longer stitch length Otherwise, you can get some puckering with double gauze. You want to use a lot of pins, very different from cork there. But it is shifty. It just has a tendency to move, and you can, when you've got your 2 layers together, the more pins, the better, just to kind of keep everything aligned.
Right, especially because the crinkles can kind of stretch out as you're sewing if you're not careful.
Exactly. Double gauze can be kind of a moving target while you're sewing it. But you kind of have to let go. And I think that's kind of a good lesson for sewists who tend towards perfection. You'll definitely want to do some seam finishing on double gauze because it's kind of built to fray. So you can do, I think it's a good candidate for French seams, for serged edges, any kind of special, whatever your favorite finish is, you're definitely going to want to get that raw edge under control. It's also a really good candidate for top stitching, again, just to kind of reinforce the seams and give those streams more structure and more support so they don't, get too stressed and then start to pull into the fabric at all. So those are my quick tips. And I should have started with this. Have you guys sewn with double gauze?
I'm not sure I've ever sewn with double gauze.
Yeah?
I've definitely sewn with regular gauze. And actually, the dress I'm wearing right now is a really heavyweight gauze, but I was just fingering it while you were talking, and I don't think it's 2 layers. I think it's just a single surprisingly heavyweight layer of gauze. So I don't think I've ever done the double gauze, but I think sewing with regular gauze is very similar. If it's just a single layer. And I know I've always done French seams for sure.
Yeah.
Always a good time to practice your French seams when you're sewing on gauze. But I think a lot of these are great tips for the next time I need to sew some gauze, for sure.
Yeah. What about you, Meg?
I've actually sewn a lot with double gauze. I was just looking through my Berta Styles online studio, and I have 6 projects posted using double gauze. And I really like double gauze. I have this kind of beach kimono that I made from like ivory double gauze with like a trim that I wear all the time to the beach, and I love it because it's nice and cool and breathable, which I love about it. And yeah, but it's totally a little shifty when you cut it, and then sometimes you cut and you're like, are these seams the same length? How did you get like 2 inches longer?
I know. That happens to me every time I cut double gauze. But I love it too. I mean, I think I mostly use like solid color double gauze, but when it has that texture, it's like that. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. It's got dimension and depth that I love. But yeah, in the summertime, there's kind of nothing better.
And especially I've used a lot of printed, and I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast too. Shannon Fabrics has metallic kind of foil double gauze, and I've many projects made from those. And yeah, I have a couple pair of pajama pants that I don't even have posted, but I've made them from double gauze, and yeah, I love it.
Yeah, there's really kind of nothing better for loungewear than double gauze.
Yeah, that sounds super comfy.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. I hope that those were some helpful tips. And if you guys think of any more, and anybody listening at home, if you have any tips for double gauze, share away. We want to hear them.
Yes, please. All right, and now it's time for our SewJo segment where we talk about what's giving us inspiration today. I tried to say information. I don't know why. But yeah, so what's inspiring y'all? Amanda?
I'm on a dress kick, and I'm kind of loving it. As I mentioned earlier, I've got this little self-drafted dress that I just keep making. I've been making, I just finished one Wixton Shift, which is a new pattern out of the kind of Wixton design house, and I love it, and I think I'm going to make another. But there's definitely a theme. There are pockets involved. They are kind of big, flowy fabrics that don't really touch you anywhere. And that's my summer uniform, and I'm kind of loving it.
Sounds awesome. And look very cute on you, too.
Thanks.
I love that orange one for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. How about you, Meg? What's giving you your SewJo?
That just reminded me when you said pockets, my soon-to-be sister-in-law, because I was at dinner over Father's Day with Julian's side of the family, and we were just talking about sewing and stuff, and she says, for my birthday or like the holidays one year, can your gift just be to just put pockets in all of my dresses? And I was like, oh, that's such a good idea.
That is a great
She's like,
idea.
I would love nothing more. I was like, I would love nothing more than to, because you know how much that can help you. And, I just thought that was fun because I was talking about making my wedding outfit and how it needs to have pockets, and I'm going to make hers too, and it's going to have pockets. And so maybe my Sojou's pockets this week. I don't know.
Feel it.
No. But I just had a sewing sprint the end of last week. I think this is the 4th pair of that Berta style utility pants pattern that I've made. I made it in this pukey, orange, no, not orangey, it's like a yellow. I think I sent you a picture, Amanda.
You did.
I was like, I'm slowly turning into Amanda's mix, but I made really lime green, made some off the shoulder summery tops to go with it too. So, but I did make my wedding sewing schedule, which I said I would make last week. So my next task is to print and tile all the patterns. That's due in a couple days.
Nice. All right. I love that you have a schedule.
That I
makes
think
me
that's
feel
such a
less
good
stressed.
It's such a good plan.
Yeah. See, I'll hold it up next to you. See, I print it out each month.
Look at you.
Oh, look at that.
And then I have due dates for everything, and everything should be done in August because I don't want to do any wedding sewing on my outfit in September.
No, because you've only got a few days once you're in September.
Exactly. So, yeah, I guess I don't really have one. It's just lots of things.
All right. Well, I was having a little trouble thinking about what my SewJo was, but then I thought, okay, well, last week I managed to actually cut out my cork and canvas abstract tote pattern and get a little bit of the sewing done on the basic on the front, and it looks really good. I did an embroidery design. It's like a sort of half mandala. It's really pretty. And then I went home and I had a moment where I looked at it and I realized that the gusset that I had cut and interfaced is just about 3 inches too short for the pattern. So I'm in the process of coming up with a fix that doesn't involve me having to cut a full new one and go get more foam interfacing. So I think I'm going to put a little extender panel right in the center.
Oh, yeah.
Good idea.
And so once I can get that done, the thing about bags for me is it takes so long to cut everything.
Yes.
I mean, the sewing itself is fine, but cutting all of those little pieces and getting them all sorted out is what just makes the whole thing. Like once I do that, then I can actually get started. But that first step is so tough for me. So that is basically done. So hopefully I will be moving forward on my tote fairly quickly at this point. So that is my SewJo.
Nice.
And also I would like to bring up from last time that my husband was very, very excited by Julian's idea of the starfish onesie.
Yes. The onesie,
yes.
Has he ordered one?
No, he wants me to make him one. And I think maybe he wants me to make one for a bunch of his friends too. So that's probably not going to happen. Just sorry, Mark.
When I make it, I'll have to do a tutorial then. So
yes, definitely. Yes. I want to know all about how this happens. Or possibly I'll get there first. Who knows?
I know. Who knows? Well, I think he wants it soon, so I'll probably have to get cracking on that.
So maybe that's Mark's SewJo.
Yeah, Mark's SewJo, yeah. And I just wanted to, I realized just before we move on to Sew and Tell, we just have Bunny right next to me. He wants to say hi. I realize I haven't talked about the bunnies in so many episodes, but they're bonded and totally cute.
Yay.
And Bunny just nudged my foot right now, and he's like, "Hey, remember me? Are you podcasting? I'm still here."
Oh, hi, Bunny.
So Bunny and Burry are just BFFs.
I love that.
They're doing good. They wanted to update you on how cute they are and everything.
Oh, that's awesome. And I actually haven't mentioned this, but my cat Patsy is doing really, really well.
Oh, yes. Good. Yes, I was thinking about Patsy too. Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Oh,
she's doing good. She's gained weight.
All right.
Good stuff.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So now let's jump into our Sew and Tell segment. So our last episode's question was, what sewing skills do you want to improve?
And we got some good responses. One of them on Instagram from SewJo, which is a really fun name to say.
I love that.
Awesome.
She says, I'm not a fan of buttonholes. They always turn out a bit wonky. I hear you.
Yeah,
I'd like to get better at them, so I fear them less. I read that. I'm like, okay, well, I've got to read that one because that is my exact life. So you and me both, friend.
Then we got another comment on Instagram as well from Karina B26. And they said, I want to master invisible zippers and welt pockets. I'm busy making the trench dress and enjoy the sewing lesson. Thanks. And I thank you for making the trench dress.
It's such a cute dress.
It is so cute.
Such a cute dress. Yeah.
Well, we also heard from Little Brick House on Instagram, who says, I'm making my first swimsuit this summer, which is very intimidating. So much elastic. Yeah. But I made my first jeans earlier this year, and I figure if I can do that, I can definitely tackle a swimsuit.
Totally.
And that's a good fit for me, too. Like, swimsuit's been on the list for a really long time, but there is just something kind of intimidating about them. So, Little Brick House, wherever you are, we salute you, and we hope your swimsuit sewing endeavors are successful.
Yeah.
And before we move on to our next question, I also want to throw out just a little shout out to DG Wood Designs, who sent me a very helpful message a couple days ago about a site called wonderhowto.com, who apparently has an app to draft a sloper that auto-drafts a sloper based off of 5 measurements. She said I should try it out for my pants sloper problems. I haven't gotten there yet because I haven't had time, what with all the family in town, but I am heading there very soon, and I want to thank you very much for pointing me to that site. I can't wait to check it out.
Nice. And so this episode's question is, what's your favorite fabric to sew with? So leave us an email or a comment on our Instagram, and we would love to know what's your favorite fabric. Yeah,
for sure. All right. And we also wanted to just throw out one quick reminder before we sign off. We would absolutely love it if you would leave us a review. This is something that helps us so much because it helps raise us in the ratings and also gets people to find our podcast if they're looking for something sewing. So we would just so deeply appreciate it if you would leave a review for us on whatever platform you listen to us on.
Yeah, we love the feedback.
Oh, yes, we really, really do.
We love hearing from you and hearing, what you are interested in, what's working for you, what's not. So let us know.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for talking about my favorite your favorite fabrics. I kind of want to sew some spandex and some gauze now.
I know. I'm totally inspired.
I love it when we inspire each other.
I know. We do.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Happy stitching. For links to everything we talked about in this episode, go to our show notes page at sewdaily.com/sewandtell. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at sewandtellpodcast@fwmedia.com or visit us on Instagram @sewandtellpod. Answer the Sew and Tell question, tell us your Sojou, or just leave us some feedback. If you enjoyed our show, please subscribe on your podcasting platform of choice. And please leave us a review, ideally a good one, because that helps listeners like you find our podcast. And tell your sewing friends about us, too. Thanks for listening, and happy stitching. Sew and Tell is a production of F&W Media Studios. It is produced by Meg Healy, Amanda Carestio, and me, Kate Zaynard. Our consulting producer is Ron Doyle, and our executive producer is Jared Mayer.